On a warm summer afternoon, the Johnson family was enjoying what seemed like an ordinary day in their quiet suburban neighborhood. The sun hung high in the sky, casting golden rays over their backyard, filled with lush green grass and towering trees. 8-year-old Emily, full of energy and laughter, was playing hide-and-seek with her father, Mark. Her giggles echoed through the air as she darted around, hiding behind bushes and peeking out to see if her dad was close. It was one of those perfect moments that parents treasure, a simple game turning into cherished memories. Mark, tall and broad-shouldered, pretended to count slowly by the old oak tree at the edge of the yard. 1, 2, 3, he called out, his deep voice mixing with Emily's excited squeals. She ran toward the flower beds near the fence, crouching low to stay hidden. Her blonde hair caught the sunlight as she peeked back, grinning mischievously. Sarah, Emily's mother, stood inside the house, watching the scene unfold from the kitchen window. With a soft smile, she sipped her coffee, feeling grateful for this peaceful moment. Life felt complete, the kind of happiness you only read about in books. But just as Mark turned away from the tree to start searching, something strange happened. There was a sudden shift in the atmosphere. One moment, Emily's laughter rang through the yard. The next, there was silence. Mark froze, mid-step, his brow furrowing. He called out, "Emily, where are you?" His voice carried across the yard, but there was no response. Sarah noticed the change too. From her spot by the window, she saw Mark scanning the area, his movements growing more frantic. At first, she thought it was part of the game. Maybe Emily had found an especially good hiding spot. But when minutes passed without so much as a giggle or rustle of leaves, worry began to creep in. Setting her cup down, Sarah stepped outside, calling out Emily's name alongside Mark. Together, they searched every corner of the yard, the flower beds, the tool shed, under the picnic table, but found nothing. Panic set in quickly. Neighbors heard the commotion and rushed over to help. Some brought flashlights while others fanned out to search nearby streets and parks. Children stopped playing, and cars slowed down as word spread. Little Emily Johnson was missing. Detectives arrived soon after, asking questions and setting up a command post in the driveway. They examined the property carefully, looking for clues. Had someone taken her? Did she wander off on her own? No one had answers. As hours turned into days, hope began to fade. Flyers with Emily's smiling face were plastered all over town, and news crews covered the story nightly. Still no leads emerged. The once happy home now felt heavy with grief. Mark spent sleepless nights blaming himself, replaying the events in his mind. Why hadn't he kept a closer eye on her? Meanwhile, Sarah clung to faith, lighting candles every night and praying for her daughter's safe return. Though life went on around them, the emptiness left by Emily's disappearance lingered, haunting the family like a shadow they couldn't escape. The days following Emily's disappearance felt like an endless nightmare for the Johnson family. Each morning brought a fresh wave of pain, as if waking up reminded them all over again that their little girl was gone. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt eerily quiet. Sarah wandered through the rooms aimlessly, her heart heavy with guilt and despair. She replayed every moment of that day in her mind, wondering if she could have done something differently. Why hadn't she gone outside to check on Emily? Why had she stayed by the window instead of joining the game? Mark wasn't faring any better. Once a cheerful and playful father, he now carried the weight of his daughter's loss like a stone tied around his neck. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was his fault, his responsibility. After all, he'd been the one playing hide-and-seek with Emily. He should have kept track of her, should have noticed when she didn't laugh or call out anymore. The thought consumed him, eating away at his spirit until he barely resembled the man he used to be. Nights were the hardest. He'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, haunted by images of Emily scared and alone, calling out for help. As weeks turned into months, the investigation began to lose steam. Detectives visited less frequently, their faces apologetic but resigned. Leads dried up and theories faded into speculation. Some suggested Emily might have wandered off and gotten lost, while others whispered about darker possibilities. But without evidence or witnesses, there was little anyone could do. Flyers grew tattered and faded in shop windows, and fewer people mentioned Emily's name. To the world, it seemed like just another unsolved case. But to the Johnsons, it was everything. Sarah refused to give up hope. While Mark retreated further into himself, she threw herself into action. She joined support groups for families of missing children, attended rallies, and spoke to anyone who would listen about keeping cases like Emily's alive. Her voice trembled sometimes during interviews, but she never stopped fighting. At home, she kept Emily's room exactly as it had been on the day she vanished. Dolls sat neatly on the shelves, clothes hung untouched in the closet, and her favorite stuffed bear rested on the bed. It was both a shrine and a promise, a way of telling Emily that she was still loved, still remembered. Despite her efforts, the strain took its toll on the couple. Arguments became frequent, fueled by grief and frustration. Mark accused Sarah of holding on to false hope, while she criticized him for giving up too easily. Their fights often ended in silence, with one retreating to the bedroom and the other sitting alone in the living room. Over time, the cracks in their marriage widened until they could no longer ignore them. 2 years after Emily's disappearance, Mark moved out, unable to face the constant reminders of what they'd lost. Sarah stayed behind, unwilling to leave the house where Emily had last been seen. Life continued, though it was hardly recognizable. Holidays came and went, marked not by joy, but by sorrow. Birthdays were the hardest. On Emily's 8th birthday, Sarah baked her favorite chocolate cake, placing a single candle in the center. She lit it and whispered a prayer, asking whoever might be listening to bring her daughter back safely. As tears streamed down her face, she promised herself and Emily that she would never stop searching. No matter how many years passed, she vowed to keep looking, to keep hoping, because deep down she believed that somewhere, somehow, Emily was still out there. And until she found her, she couldn't let go. Years passed, and life for Sarah Johnson became a delicate balancing act between moving forward and clinging to the past. The pain of losing Emily never fully faded, but it softened enough to allow her to function day by day. She threw herself into work, volunteering at local shelters and community centers, always keeping an ear out for stories or rumors about missing children. Her advocacy gave her purpose, a way to channel her grief into something meaningful. Yet no matter how busy she kept herself, there was always a part of her heart reserved for Emily, a quiet ache that lingered in every moment of silence. Mark, on the other hand, drifted further away from the life they once shared. After the divorce, he moved to a small apartment across town where he spent most of his time alone. He avoided talking about Emily, as if saying her name aloud might reopen wounds he wasn't ready to face. Friends tried to reach out, inviting him to dinners or weekend get-togethers, but he often declined, claiming he had too much work to do. In truth, he felt unworthy of happiness, burdened by the guilt of not protecting his daughter. Over time, he became a shadow of the man he used to be, quiet, withdrawn, and disconnected from the world. Sarah stayed in the family home, unable to leave the place where Emily had last been seen. It wasn't just nostalgia that kept her there. It was hope. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside made her wonder if today would be the day she'd hear her daughter's voice again. She left Emily's room untouched, almost like a museum dedicated to her memory. Sometimes, late at night, Sarah would sit on the edge of the bed, holding Emily's favorite stuffed bear and whispering words only a mother could understand. "I miss you," she'd say softly, as if somehow Emily could hear her. "Please come back to me." Despite the distance between them, Sarah and Mark still crossed paths occasionally, at court hearings related to the ongoing investigation, or during holidays when mutual friends hosted gatherings. These encounters were awkward and strained, filled with unspoken blame and regret. They rarely spoke directly to each other, communicating instead through nods or polite smiles. But even in their brokenness, they shared one thing: the belief that Emily was still alive. Neither of them dared to voice it openly, but both held on to the possibility, however slim it might have been. To cope with the emptiness, Sarah developed routines that helped her feel connected to Emily. On sunny afternoons, she'd sit in the backyard under the old oak tree, flipping through photo albums filled with pictures of happier times. She remembered how Emily loved climbing its branches, giggling as she pretended to be a bird soaring through the sky. Those memories brought both comfort and sorrow, reminding Sarah of what she'd lost while also fueling her determination to find answers. As the years went by, people around her began to move on. Neighbors stopped asking about Emily, assuming the case was long forgotten. Even some of Sarah's closest friends hesitated to bring up the subject, fearing it would upset her, but Sarah refused to let go. She marked each anniversary of Emily's disappearance with candles, prayers, and renewed resolve. She told herself that somewhere, somehow, her daughter was waiting to be found. And until that day came, she wouldn't rest. In the quiet moments, when the house was still and the world outside seemed distant, Sarah allowed herself to dream. She imagined Emily returning home, older now but still the same bright-eyed girl who loved hide-and-seek and chocolate cake. She pictured wrapping her arms around her daughter, feeling the warmth of her embrace, and hearing her sweet laugh once more. Those dreams kept her going, even on the hardest days, because deep down Sarah knew one thing for certain. No matter how much time passed, she would never stop believing in miracles. 8 years had passed since Emily's disappearance, and the once vibrant backyard now felt like a forgotten corner of Sarah's life. Overgrown weeds tangled around the flower beds, and the old oak tree stood tall but weary, its branches stretching toward the sky as if reaching for something lost. Sarah rarely ventured out there anymore. It was too painful, too full of memories she couldn't bear to face. But one crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, something unusual caught her attention. It started with a strange sensation in the air, a faint rustling that didn't belong to the wind. At first, Sarah dismissed it as her imagination playing tricks on her. After all, she'd spent years listening for sounds that weren't there, hoping against hope to hear Emily's voice or footsteps. But this time, the noise persisted, growing, louder and more distinct. She stepped outside, wrapping her sweater tightly around herself, and followed the sound to the base of the oak tree. There she noticed something odd, patches of earth that looked different from the rest. The soil appeared softer, almost disturbed, forming patterns that seemed deliberate rather than natural. Curiosity tugged at her, pulling her closer despite the unease settling in her chest. Kneeling down, she pressed her hand against the ground, feeling its texture. It was loose, freshly turned, unlike the compact dirt surrounding it. Her heart began to race. Was this just an animal burrowing? Or could it be something else entirely? She grabbed a small garden spade from the shed and hesitated for a moment, staring at the patch of earth. What if she was wrong? What if digging only brought disappointment? But then again, what if it didn't? Taking a deep breath, Sarah plunged the spade into the soil. Each scoop revealed nothing at first, just rocks and roots. But she kept going, driven by a mix of fear and determination. As she dug deeper, her hands trembled, not from exhaustion but from anticipation. Then suddenly the blade of the spade struck something solid. Her pulse quickened. Carefully, she brushed away the dirt with her fingers, revealing the edge of a wooden box buried beneath the surface. Her stomach churned as she lifted it out, brushing off the remaining soil. The box was small, no bigger than a shoebox, and made of weathered wood that creaked when she opened it. Inside, she found a collection of items that sent chills down her spine. A delicate locket lay at the bottom, its surface tarnished but still recognizable. Engraved on the back were the initials EJ, Emily's initials. Next to it was a crumpled piece of paper, folded neatly despite its age. With trembling hands, Sarah unfolded it and read the words scrawled inside. "Help me." Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized these belongings belonged to Emily. But the discovery didn't stop there. Tucked beneath the paper was a faded drawing, a simple sketch of their family complete with stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Sarah recognized it instantly. Emily had drawn similar pictures countless times before she vanished. These weren't random objects left behind. They were clues, messages meant to lead someone back to her daughter. As night fell and the temperature dropped, Sarah sat on the damp grass, clutching the box to her chest. Her mind raced with questions. Who had buried this here? How long had it been hidden beneath the tree? And most importantly, was Emily still alive? For the first time in 8 years, Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite within her. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was a sign. Someone, or something, wanted her to find this. Whatever it took, she vowed to uncover the truth. Because now, more than ever, she believed Emily needed her. The moment Sarah stepped into the police station with the wooden box clutched tightly in her arms, she felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Hope, fear, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. Detectives who had long since closed the file on Emily's case were called back to reopen it. The sight of the locket, the drawing, and the chilling note reignited their interest, transforming what had been a cold case into a race against time. For Sarah, this was more than just evidence. It was proof that Emily was still out there waiting to be found. Detective Lewis, now grayer and slower than he'd been 8 years ago, took charge of the investigation. He examined the items carefully, his experienced eyes scanning for any detail that might lead them closer to the truth. The locket was sent to the lab for analysis, where forensic experts worked tirelessly to extract fingerprints and DNA. To everyone's astonishment, they discovered traces of genetic material that matched Emily's records from years earlier. It was undeniable. These belongings belonged to her. But how had they ended up buried in the backyard? And why? As the detectives dug deeper, another clue emerged. Faint fingerprints on the locket didn't match Emily's or anyone in the Johnson family. Instead, they belonged to someone unexpected, a local handyman named Harold Grayson. Harold had worked on small repair jobs around the neighborhood, including at the Johnsons' house shortly before Emily disappeared. At the time, no one had suspected him of anything unusual. He was quiet, unassuming, and kept to himself. But now his name stood out like a red flag. When questioned, Harold initially denied knowing anything about the box or its contents. His nervous demeanor, however, told a different story. Under intense interrogation, cracks began to show in his carefully constructed facade. Finally, he broke down, confessing that he had witnessed something terrible on the day Emily vanished. According to Harold, he had seen a man lurking near the Johnson property, a man he recognized as Thomas Reed, a reclusive neighbor who lived in a cabin deep in the woods. Terrified of getting involved, Harold had kept silent all these years, haunted by guilt but too afraid to speak up. Thomas Reed wasn't exactly a stranger to law enforcement. Over the years, he had been questioned in connection with other missing persons cases, though nothing concrete had ever stuck. A loner with a shadowy past, he rarely interacted with neighbors and preferred solitude over company. The mention of his name sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Could he really be responsible for taking Emily? And if so, where had he kept her? Hidden all this time? Armed with Harold's confession and the new evidence, the authorities wasted no time launching a search operation. They obtained a warrant to raid Thomas's cabin, located miles away from town in a dense forest. As officers prepared for the mission, Sarah paced anxiously at home, unable to sit still. Every second felt like an eternity. She replayed the contents of the box in her mind, the locket, the drawing, the desperate plea for help, and prayed that this wasn't another dead end. Finally, late that night, the phone rang. Sarah answered it with trembling hands, bracing herself for whatever news awaited her. Detective Lewis's voice came through the line, steady but filled with gravity. "We've found something," he said. "It's not over yet, but we're close. Closer than we've ever been." Though he couldn't reveal details, those words were enough to reignite Sarah's hope. After 8 agonizing years of wondering, searching, and praying, she finally felt like the pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. For the first time in nearly a decade, Sarah allowed herself to believe that Emily might still be alive. Whoever had taken her, whatever horrors she had endured, Sarah knew one thing for certain: she wouldn't stop fighting until her daughter was safe in her arms again. The raid on Thomas Reed's secluded cabin was carried out under the cover of darkness, with officers moving swiftly and silently through the dense forest. The air was thick with tension as they approached the weathered structure, its windows dark and unwelcoming. Flashlights cut through the shadows, illuminating patches of overgrown grass and rusted tools scattered around the property. To anyone passing by, it looked like an abandoned home, but the detectives knew better. This was where answers lay hidden. As they entered the cabin, the stench of dampness and decay hit them immediately. Inside, the space was cluttered with old furniture, stacks of yellowed newspapers, and jars filled with unidentifiable substances. It seemed like the kind of place time had forgotten, but the team wasn't there to marvel at the eerie atmosphere. They were searching for signs of life. Every room was meticulously checked, every corner inspected. At first glance, it appeared empty, just another relic of isolation. Then, one officer noticed something unusual beneath a loose floorboard in the living room. A trapdoor. Heartbeats quickened as the trapdoor was pried open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the earth. The descent was slow and deliberate, flashlights bobbing in the darkness as they ventured deeper underground. What they found below left even the most seasoned officers shaken: a hidden bunker equipped with basic supplies and makeshift furniture. And in the farthest corner, huddled under a thin blanket, was a figure who barely resembled the vibrant little girl Sarah had last seen 8 years ago. It was Emily. She looked frail, her once bright eyes now clouded with fear and confusion. Her hair was matted, her clothes tattered, and her skin pale from years spent in the dim light of the bunker. For a moment, she didn't react, too accustomed to silence and solitude to trust that this intrusion was real. But when Detective Lewis knelt beside her and softly said, "Emily, we're here to take you home," something inside her broke. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered 2 words: "My mom." News of Emily's discovery reached Sarah within minutes. When the call came, she dropped the phone, her knees buckling beneath her. Officers rushed her to the scene, where she stood trembling outside the cabin, unsure if she was dreaming or awake. As Emily emerged from the bunker, supported by paramedics, Sarah ran toward her, sobbing uncontrollably. Their reunion was raw and overwhelming, a collision of pain, joy, and disbelief. Emily clung to her mother as though afraid she might disappear again, while Sarah stroked her hair, repeating, "You're safe now. You're safe." Back at the hospital, doctors examined Emily, treating her for malnutrition and dehydration. Though physically weak, she showed remarkable resilience, clinging to fragments of her childhood memories. She remembered playing hide-and-seek with her dad, laughing under the oak tree, and snuggling with her stuffed bear before bedtime. But much of her life since her abduction remained fragmented, buried under layers of trauma. Therapists assured Sarah that healing would take time, but encouraged her to focus on rebuilding their bond. Meanwhile, justice moved swiftly against Thomas Reed. Arrested at the scene after attempting to flee, he confessed to kidnapping Emily during a moment of twisted obsession. He claimed he had intended to protect her from the world, isolating her in the bunker to keep her safe. His warped logic sickened everyone involved, but his confession ensured he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. For Sarah, the relief of finding Emily alive was tempered by the realization of what her daughter had endured. Guilt gnawed at her, guilt for not finding her sooner, for letting 8 years slip away. Yet amidst the sorrow, there was hope. Emily was alive. She was home. And no matter how long the road ahead might be, Sarah vowed to walk it alongside her daughter, step by painful step. Reuniting with Emily marked the beginning of a long and challenging journey for Sarah, one that would test her patience, strength, and love like never before. At first, Emily struggled to adjust to life outside the bunker. The world she had known as a child was gone, replaced by a reality that felt foreign and overwhelming. Bright lights hurt her eyes, loud noises startled her, and even simple interactions left her anxious. She clung to Sarah constantly, afraid to let her out of sight, as though worried she might vanish again. Sarah responded with unwavering tenderness, doing everything she could to make Emily feel safe. She redecorated her daughter's room, adding soft blankets, familiar toys, and comforting scents to help ease her transition. Meals were small and gentle, designed to rebuild her strength without overwhelming her senses. Slowly but surely, Emily began to open up, sharing fragments of her memories from the bunker. Some days she spoke about the cold, dark space where she spent most of her time. Other days she recalled moments when Thomas Reed would bring her food or talk to her in hushed tones, his words often confusing and contradictory. Therapy became a cornerstone of their daily routine. A kind and patient counselor worked closely with Emily, helping her process the trauma she had endured. Through art, storytelling, and play, Emily began to piece together her fractured memories, finding ways to express emotions she hadn't been able to articulate before. Sarah attended every session, learning how to support her daughter without pushing too hard. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, tears, and nights when neither of them could sleep. But they faced each challenge together, growing stronger with each passing day. Despite the progress, there were reminders of what Emily had lost. Simple things, like riding a bike or playing with friends, felt alien to her now. Once a bubbly and outgoing child, she had become quiet and reserved, hesitant to trust anyone outside her immediate family. Sarah encouraged her gently, taking her to parks and community events, introducing her to people who cared about her recovery. Neighbors who remembered Emily from years ago welcomed her back warmly, offering smiles and small gestures of kindness. Over time, these connections helped her regain confidence, reminding her that the world wasn't all bad. One of the hardest parts of the healing process was dealing with the media attention. News of Emily's rescue spread quickly, turning their quiet suburban neighborhood into a hub of reporters and cameras. While some coverage was supportive, highlighting the resilience of the Johnson family, others sensationalized the story, dredging up painful details of her abduction. Sarah shielded Emily as much as possible, refusing interviews and keeping their lives private. "We've been through enough," she told one persistent journalist firmly. "Let us heal." As weeks turned into months, glimmers of hope began to shine through. Emily started smiling more often, her laughter returning little by little. One afternoon, while sitting under the old oak tree in the backyard, she picked up a crayon and began drawing, a picture of herself holding hands with her mom beneath a bright yellow sun. When Sarah saw it, tears filled her eyes. It was the same image she had found in the wooden box, only this time it felt different. This time it symbolized hope, renewal, and the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. Though scars remained, both physical and emotional, their relationship grew stronger with each passing day. Sarah learned to cherish the small victories. Emily eating a full meal, sleeping through the night, or simply saying, "I love you." For her part, Emily began to trust again, realizing that no matter what horrors she had faced, her mom would always be there to protect her. Together, they proved that even after the darkest storms, light could still break through. And though the road ahead was uncertain, they walked it hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Months turned into years, and life for Sarah and Emily slowly began to resemble something close to normal. The journey was far from easy. There were days when old fears resurfaced, nights when nightmares woke them both, and moments when the weight of what they'd endured threatened to pull them under. But through it all, their bond grew stronger, forged in the fires of pain and resilience. They learned to navigate this new chapter together, finding joy in small victories and solace in each other's presence. Emily blossomed in ways neither of them could have imagined at first. With time, therapy, and unwavering support, she started reclaiming pieces of her childhood. She joined a local art class where her creativity flourished. Her drawings became vibrant and full of life, scenes of sunlit parks, smiling faces, and families holding hands. One day she proudly showed Sarah a painting of their backyard, with the old oak tree standing tall in the center. "This is my happy place now," she said softly, her voice tinged with pride. It was a reminder that even the places haunted by tragedy could transform into symbols of hope. Sarah, too, found healing in unexpected ways. Advocacy work remained a cornerstone of her life, but now it carried deeper meaning. She became a voice for families still searching for their missing loved ones, sharing her story to inspire others not to give up. At community events, she often stood beside Emily, who had begun speaking publicly about her experience. Though it wasn't easy for either of them, they knew their words might offer comfort or courage to someone else facing unimaginable loss. Together, they proved that survival wasn't just about enduring, it was about thriving despite everything. The backyard, once a source of heartache, became a sanctuary for renewal. Sarah planted flowers around the base of the oak tree, creating a colorful garden that bloomed year-round. She added a small bench beneath its branches, where she and Emily would sit together, talking about dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. On special occasions, they lit candles there, honoring the 8 years they had lost while celebrating the gift of being reunited. It was here, one quiet evening, that Emily turned to her mom and said, "I think I'm ready to forgive." Forgiveness didn't come easily, nor did it erase the scars of the past, but it marked an important step in their healing journey, a way to release the anger and pain that had lingered for so long. For Sarah, it meant forgiving herself for not finding Emily sooner. For Emily, it meant letting go of the fear that had kept her trapped even after escaping the bunker. Together, they chose to focus on the present, building a future filled with love, laughter, and possibility. As seasons changed, so did their lives. Emily entered high school, excelling in academics and making friends who adored her quirky humor and artistic talent. Sarah remarried, a kind man named David who respected her past and embraced her family with open arms. Though Mark remained distant, unable to reconcile his guilt, he sent occasional letters expressing his relief and gratitude that Emily was safe. The wounds of divorce never fully healed, but they no longer defined them. Instead, they chose to focus on the ties that mattered most, the ones binding them as mother and daughter. On Emily's 16th birthday, Sarah threw a party in the backyard, decorating it with twinkling lights and balloons. Friends, neighbors, and supporters gathered to celebrate the girl who had overcome so much. As Emily blew out the candles on her cake, surrounded by love and laughter, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. This was more than just a celebration. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, light could prevail. That night, as fireworks lit up the sky, Sarah wrapped her arms around Emily and whispered, "No matter what happens, we'll always have each other." Emily smiled, leaning into her embrace. In that moment, they weren't just survivors, they were thrivers, proof that love could conquer even the deepest shadows. And though the road ahead held uncertainties, they faced it together, hand in hand, hearts full of hope.